Hello and welcome back to another video. Oh my god, okay, let's just move on. Today we're going to talk about one of the fundamentals in JavaScript, which is pretty much callbacks and asynchronous operations. Asynchronous, by the word itself, is pretty much something that does not happen concurrently, like let's say in a line it doesn't happen straightly or something like that. I know that wasn't really clear, but okay. So what I have here in my code editor or IDE is pretty much just a library called Node.js so that we can have a let's say a smooth and fast development in this file. And I have a link to an API which is fake, by the way, and it's called JSON placeholder. It's pretty much just a placeholder for data, fake data, and I just referenced that in my script start. And we have a whiteboard here since I will explain how event loops, if you've heard of it, work in JavaScript. If you've been let's say learning JavaScript for a while now, and I have, you probably have heard of JavaScript or Node.JS in that manner being single-threaded. Now what that means is that JavaScript scans for code line by line, so line 1, line 2, etc, etc. Now an event loop is very much a, let's say, a loop, a circle. Oh my god, a circle is so bad. Anyway, a circle, okay? So we have a circle and this is a loop. It runs every time. So now let's say we have the first line of code right here. Let's say we have a console log. We want a console log, and the compiler will run that, and then it goes to the next line, another, let's say, alert on a website. The compiler will run that, and when let me continue first, and then other operations, synchronous operations. But if, let's say, a compiler happens to run upon a set timeout, let's say console log, and then a set timeout function before it completes a loop, then the compiler will wait for that set timeout to finish. Say the set timeout has a timer of 2000 milliseconds, then you will have to wait for 2000 milliseconds for the compiler to continue the event loop. So it will stop here, for example, then after 2 seconds or 2000 milliseconds, that is the only time it will continue again. If you don't set it up to be an asynchronous call. And of course, in the world of web development, when you have to wait for something, that is bad. It will probably look like your let's say website is freezing. So to actually show an example, let's have just a simple one in our file. I call it server because it's pretty much where asynchronous mostly happens. So we have a console.log, first line, and console.log, second line, and console.log, third line. So now, and just like in npm, we just say npm run start, as what is stated here in package JSON. The scripts start, so it will run the script of start and enter. And now that will call node1, which will call this file, or run this file rather. There we go, first line, second line, third line, as what is displayed in the file or written. But now what if we set the second line, which is supposed to be second line, or wrapped rather, inside a set timeout, or something that takes some time to finish, like that. And let's put it inside of that, and let's say 3000 milliseconds or 3 seconds. Now we run. There we go, as you can see. And again, to see that clearer, more clearly rather. There we go. There we go. It's what do you call this? It happened 3 seconds later. So what happened here is that the event loop or the compiler runs through the first line. So let's say this is the first line, and then it read the set timeout, and the set timeout said that this will be the set timeout. Okay, let me explain what the set timeout is first. The set timeout takes two crucial parameters, and the other parameters are pretty much just, well, another parameters for the function that you are going to call. Okay, first we have the first parameter, which is pretty much just a callback function. It is called callback function because you will call it after this set timeout finishes, or let's say you will call this function inside a set timeout, which is a function. Okay, so this can be anything. You can have it as a narrow function, or as a just a normal function like that without a name, or you can actually put, so let's say we have a function of console func, and then we will pass that inside of the set timeout, and that will run it. There we go. So now if we console.log a callback, and we wait. There we go. So this set timeout is a function based on what I know, and this function will call upon another function after 3 seconds, which is console log func, and this console log func will console log this right here. So now back to explaining. So now the compiler will read the, okay, it pretty much will read everything, but this function will not is not called. It's just there stated, so it will ignore that and will move on to the set timeout. Now it will read the set timeout and will read this as well. That's the callback of it, and will read this as well. And now the set timeout says that you need to wait for 3 seconds for you to call this function right here. And the compiler will understand that and will move on to the next line. And that is when it will execute the console log third line. And now, since this is the last line of, well, all the lines of code in this file, then the let's say, oh, never mind. Okay, let me rephrase that. And then, okay, wait, let me continue. Since this is the last line of code in this file, then it will not run anything anymore. However, it is still waiting for the set timeout, and set timeout is a micro what do you call this, micro task, I think, in an event loop. And so that means, oh my bad, so that means this event loop, or okay, I should have made this into a circle. So we have first, let me just do this properly, and this is timeout, okay, and this is okay, it's bad, this is say end, I guess, and then just, there we go, so the end, another first, or something like that. Anyway, so now we went to the first, and then the compiler ran the timeout, or let's say read, not run, okay, my bad, read the timeout, and now it ran the end, or the final line of the code. However, a timeout is a micro task, which means that the compiler, after going to the end, will go back to the timeout, or will wait for the timeout rather, and it will go back to the timeout. Once the timeout says that it is finished, or like 3000 milliseconds have passed. So like, okay, I'm so bad at using a whiteboard, but whatever. How do I erase this? Then select, maybe delete, whatever, it's better. Okay. As you can see, okay, finishes third line, and then it will wait for 3 seconds. And now that is pretty nice, and like we can actually let's say continue this so on and so forth as a callback function. So like inside the console log func, let's say we need to wait for another I don't know, oh, okay, I kind of hate that, but anyway, we have to wait for another 3000 milliseconds, I guess, before we can console log something out of here. Okay, okay. 6 seconds have passed. Oh, okay. It's a typo, I guess I erased it. There we go. Oh, why am I silent? I should be counting down. Okay, again. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and sometime now. There we go. Anytime, I mean. And again, if you want another set timeout, then you can have another set timeout inside. And if I'm not mistaken, that is called callback hell, wherein like if you need to wait for something, but of course not a set timeout like an API call, then you will have to put the, let's say, result, I think, yeah, result inside of this parentheses, and then let's say you want to console log the result. I haven't tried that yet, using a callback function to get an API or like data, but you know what, let me try that actually. If you have a function get data, I'm used to async and await and what's it called, this promises, but let's try this. Callback function to call an API, const data equals fetch. I'm just going to use the usual fetch API, pretty much the link of this. And if you just console log the data right now, you can, let's see the result. Of course, we should call this function. Alright, wait. I was going to use the, I don't know what it's called, but it's pretty much just like this. You enclose the function, and then I forgot what's called, and then we just have a parenthesis beside it, and then it will be called, there we go, console logs promise, and it says pending because it is. However, if we have some sort of function, I think, function inside of a function, is this correct? Oh, I should give this a name, I think. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I don't know how to work with callbacks. Well, let's try it. Then get the does this work? No, it does not. I was going to discuss about callbacks, but here I am. Excuse me. How do I resolve a promise without just using a callback function? I mean, a timeout will not work because it's still a promise. Will that not work? Like maybe this? Oh my god, what am I doing? This is definitely wrong. Yeah, it's wrong, definitely. Okay, let me pause the video first. Okay, my dog has stopped barking. I don't know how to work my way around this. I just know how to explain the callback and set timeouts, but this this is definitely a promise. So let's just search it, bro. Go. How to say promise is a callback function. Let's see. Although this is really not practical. Yeah, as you can see. Second parameter to another function, especially here. As you can see here, availability. Is it alright to show frequent count? Yeah, I think it's alright because it's free. If it's not, please tell me. Anyway. Let me see how do you do it. We get, oh, seriously? So they still use async. So what I'm trying to do here is actually just use a pure callback function to like resolve the promise, which I know does not work, but because I haven't really read much into callbacks and just straight up used promises and async-await, but I guess it doesn't. Alright then. So as you've seen in the free code camp, callbacks using let's say callbacks upon callbacks is not scalable or viable, and it is impractical in, let's say, a real world situation of coding. So one of the things that is actually very good is using promises. Okay, let's get to this. So promises are pretty much a promise in the word itself, which promises the compiler that it will be resolved soon enough. Like, it just needs to get something or wait for something, because fetching data from the internet takes time, obviously, and you don't want it to block your, let's say, the interactivity of your website, for smooth stuff and UX kind of stuff. Anyway, and especially in servers, you don't want your server to freeze up every time a user wants to fetch something from it or wants to write something to your database. Anyway, let's do the simple promise to get data from this API, or let's say endpoint in JSON placeholder, which is comments. So we have a function of get data. Wait, should I talk about callbacks some more? No, let's not. Let's do it later. Okay. A function of get data, which will return a new promise, right? Or oh wait, what I'm doing here is something that I use in when I want to separate, let's say, stuff as a modular kind of structure. But let's do it simply. Const promise var equals new promise. So this is pretty much just a promise which takes a callback, and this callback has two let's say parameters. Only takes two, which is resolve which means you will when the promise is resolved, pretty much, and reject. And then, oh, what I'm actually showing here is how to construct your own promise. And this API, when you fetch this API rather, using, let's say, Axios, or I think it's inbuilt or native. I think it's native. The fetch API, then it is already a promise in itself. So if you use a promise into a promise, then that will be kind of complicated, actually unnecessary. But what we're doing here is just showing you how to actually build your own promise. Before we proceed, I think I should have told you about the callbacks. Oh well. So should I put it inside the function? Alright, let's put it inside the function actually. So function, let's say a resolve after 2 seconds. 2 seconds. Then we'll have a, because we want to have a variable here, and I think based on what I know, you can't pass a variable any more than resolve or reject. Can you? Let's see. Params. There we go. Two arguments. You can't. Okay. So let's say we have the value. Okay, let's say we have the value. And then after we set timeout, of 2 seconds, we will console.log value. There we go. Then we will return this promise, which is promise bar. Or we can just say return new promise. There we go. As you can see, it returns a promise of Amy. Right? To actually resolve this promise, we need to have a resolve. I mean, we need to encapsulate the value that we want to return inside of a promise inside of a resolve. And what we want to resolve or return is actually the set timeout. So we're going to say const timeout, set timeout, and then if value. So this is like a custom error handling, I think. Yeah. So like if the user didn't provide any value or parameter, which is what you require to, let's say, resolve a promise, then we can just say that, if there's no value, rather. If there's no value, you can just say reject. Please provide a value. And then if value, you can just say resolve timeout. Is it timeout or okay? Because you want to wait for 2 seconds, right? Then to actually show this, we have to say console.log first and console.log third, or let's say last. So if I say that, excuse me, so the resolve after 2 seconds, I think we should rename it. Returns a promise. Returns I should actually change this. Okay, there we go. Returns a promise. So const, let's say console log value. I'm not good with names, but okay. Returns promise. There we go. And we just say that we want console.log value. So if you run this without actually passing any parameter inside this function, which is value, let's see what happens. Oh my god. Okay. I forgot the fundamental in a promise. Anyway, so this returns a promise, remember? So that means this variable here is a promise, which is this right here. So to actually resolve a promise, what we need to do is, a promise has three, let's say it's like an object, so it has three keys. It has it's just a key of catch, then and finally. And the one thing that we want to actually have, which is resolve, is returned, or let's say is contained by the then. So like if it's resolved, if the promise is resolved, then as you can, no pun intended, if the promise is resolved inside the console of value, then we want to run a function, and this function, or callback function, as you can see how important callbacks are, will take on the parameter which is returned by the there we go, by the, what do you call this, returned by the promise. So let's say value n, then we can just say value, set a function. Shouldn't have used a timeout, huh? Okay, console.log value. Yeah, I'm not really used with set timeouts, aren't I? Anyway, so then we run a function for this, for the resolved value of the promise. If it is, let's say, not resolved, then it's either rejected, or let's say it's rejected because it only has two parameters. So what we want to do then is we want to catch the rejected, let's say the value of, let's say the reason of why it's rejected. And pretty much this, the parameter this has is an error, so you can just say error and console.error error. There we go. And then the third key is what we call finally. Just like the word, if after the two, let's say, I think it's a function, yeah. After the two function runs, which is then and catch, we want to finally run something. And with finally, it can run anytime, or like, I mean, no matter what, rather. There we go. Let me rephrase that. Finally runs no matter what in a promise. So finally, we can just say console.log promise has finished execute. So let me try this actually, if this works or not. There we go. It actually works, finally. What's this undefined? So this undefined actually is the set timeout, which shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't actually happen, but it happened because we actually ran it inside of this promise. So I was wrong in that. Let's just say that new value. So let's say we are trying to, what do you call this? We're trying to flip a string. Say flipped value equals to value dot what do you call this? Value dot split, then dot reverse, and then dot join. There we go. And just say flipped value. If not mistaken, this is how you flip a string altogether. Split pretty much splits the string into an array, and when you just pass a simple quotation mark here, which can be single or double, it will split it letter by letter. But if you pass something, let's say A, it will split the string by A's, or every A that it encounters, or every period, if you say period, exclamation marks, and so on and so forth. And that's the same with join, but in this case it will join the arrays together. Anyway, let's try this now. Then one thing we can do is actually I've been using libraries for too long, haven't I? Anyway, I still there we go. It didn't let's say resolve the flipped value, and it says please provide a value. And this reject, instead of a string, it should actually be an error because it is an error. So we want to reject, or let's say throw new error instead of reject, but in this case we're going to reject. So let's say reject new error. I mean just backspace now, don't want any spaces or white space. Please provide a string to be flipped. So this should actually be string flipper. There we go. As you can see now, it is our own error finally. Here we go. Please provide a value, and the promise has finished executing. I'm not sure run this again. It's kind of confusing in Node mode because just sometimes doubles. There we go. Now it's yeah, there we go. It's line by line, the first and the last, because we waited for this promise. So in promises, even though we don't really set timeouts, that's why I'm used to it, because I don't really understand. I haven't really mastered set timeouts that much. But anyway, promises are pretty much something that is non-blocking, or it does not block the thread. So like it tells the compiler that, okay, wait for me, I promise that I will return a value soon, and that is where the then keyword comes. So then it will console log the value after it's been resolved right here. And as you can see here, it's finished running the last line, or which is pretty much the line, the synchronous line right after this asynchronous, let's say, operation. And this function right there is synchronous as well, but the only synchronous thing it did is that it returned a new promise inside of this variable. I mean to this variable, and this variable is a promise which will occur, or which will resolve after all the synchronous operations has resolved, as you can see in the console log. And it finally runs at the end of the promise, no matter if there's an error or if there's no error. So let's say we pass on the string of I love to eat. Oh, there we go. There we go. I love to eat, and it's been reversed. That's very cool. And this still runs. The promise has finished executing. So this is something like, I guess, for cleanups. I haven't really used it because I'm not sure what I can use it for, but it is there. It is there, so I told you about it. So that's pretty much it in promises and yeah, promises. There's still something else, which is asynchronous functions, or async-await. And you know what, before we continue, let me actually teach you about the just a simple callback. So let's say we have, instead of passing the callback function inside of the then, we have a function that it says console log result, which takes in the value. So pretty much console log the value, and we can just say here console log result, and it's still the same. And this is the one thing that I want to tell you, which is pretty much simple, is to not use or to not call the function inside of this then kind of parenthesis. Because what that does is it will actually call this function and inside of this, and that will be undefined, because what this actually takes is a reference to that function, not the result or something along those lines. Because inside of this, the function that you put inside will be called inside of this. I haven't really dug deep inside. Oh my god, I keep using inside. But that is how it works. So always remember that in callbacks like set timeout and stuff like that, do not call the function if you are trying to, let's say, split them into files or modules, which is actually good practice. It's like here, if you want to put it in a file called console log result, then we can, and just don't call it inside. Because we need this then function here needs the reference to this function, not when it's executed. Did I explain that properly? I'm not sure, but let's continue. So let's say we have an expensive operation here that takes a very long time. Like you loop through, let's say for at I equals 0, I is less than 2000, I plus plus. Then we just say that we what do you call this? Okay, so flip value. So we just keep flipping it, I guess. Let's see the result. Okay, let's see what the result will be. Let's flip value. There we go. Let's see how long this will take. There we go. It's very fast. Let's try another one. Very fast. See? But if we actually let's say did this outside, so like just add it here and removed this format document, and just say console log result. Or just random gibberish, and let's just put it here for now and remove it, and let's see how this works. There we go, undefined. That's because the event loop has finished running and it didn't encounter any promise or asynchronous or callbacks or set timeouts in that regard, which is a callback function. And it didn't wait for this to finish, which took, I'm not sure how many seconds this is, but probably around 10 milliseconds, 20, and it didn't wait for this to finish. That's why we got undefined, no matter what. Say 200, even 200, but if 20, let's say, there you go, even 20, that is very fast, and it still doesn't wait for it. And I'll just have this again. Oh wait, we're going to use asynchronous. Alright, let me actually show you how you can get data now using promises, because earlier it was a bust. Okay, so we have a const data equals fetch. So this is the fetch API, which is inbuilt in JavaScript. Although I recommend Axios, but you can use fetch. Anywho, so if there's no data, let's say if no data, we just throw error, or there is no data inside the API or something like that. And then if there's a data, then we can just say resolve data. So now we don't need the parameter anymore, and just say get data, and then we can just const initialize data promise. We can just put this new promise inside of this function right here, but I'm not sure why I do it this way. I guess I'm used to asynchronous, to async-await, but anyway. So now this returns the promise. That means this variable in itself is a promise. So then we will get the data, or it can be named anything really. It is just a parameter, and we want to console about the data. Else, or let's say if it's not resolved, that means it's rejected. So you will catch that rejected message or something along the lines of that, which is an error, and just console.error or console.error, because the format is in error format. That's why I just use console error. And finally, you can just say console.log the promise has been fulfilled. And there's an error. Let's see. App crashed. What's the okay, it's this one. Okay, let's try that again. There we go. I had a panic attack right there. Oh well. Wait, what do you get from this again? I forgot. Data that responds, so we can get the data. What does this JSON placeholder return? I forgot. Body. I think it's body. No. Dot status. What? Really? There's no data store. Missing data that. Oh wait, is this a promise? Is this a promise as well? Well, let's try. Data. Let's see if this is a promise as well. Yeah, it's not a promise. That's weird. Oh well. As you can see, it took some time, right? So where's the date? Where's the value of this? I think I'm taking a long time. Must have been fulfilled. Really, where's the value of this? Anyway. Okay, let's try using async-await, and that is much better in my opinion. Because this still looks bad, but this is useful. One of the things that it's useful for is, as I've used it in React, inside a use effect, because sometimes you need to use for loops to loop through data, which is not really advisable, and it will cause bugs if you use for loops or loops in general inside of use effects. But if you do it inside of a callback function, because it is callback, then that means it can be run. and that callback is of course inside of an asynchronous call, which is a promise, and inside of this right here, which is pretty convenient. Anyway, because in await we need to have an async function. Yeah, we need to name it async right here. Or if you're more of an arrow function kind of guy, then you can just say const get data is equals to async, and then the arrow function like that. Now this is the easy part. You can just say const data equals await. So we want to wait for this fetch API to fulfill the promise, which is fetch. There we go. Yeah, I think they were wrong with the, yeah, because now the data is a response and earlier it was a promise. I need to study more on promises. Anyway, so now if we console.log the data, and if you're using TypeScript, I think you need to add an if, like if this can be undefined. Let's say in Firebase there's like a user auth or something, and it can definitely be undefined, and you need to use an if statement, something like that, to fulfill something. Anyway, get data. So now if you call that, oh, it's the same, so I guess it's correct. Well, it's the same stuff, so let me see what we need. Ah, the JSON, right, I forgot. Now, okay, now this should work. Oh wait, I think that JSON is also a promise, so if we just say console like that, this is also a promise, right? Yeah, it's also a promise. If you console log that, it will return pending, as you can see. So earlier, okay, let's continue this first. So we have, excuse me, we have raw data and const parse data, I guess. So we will await the raw data to be sparsed in JSON, or I'm not sure what it's called, but .json. Now we console.log or return, if we like, we'll just return parse data, and we can just assign this inside of a variable. So let's say const data equals get data, and console.log data. Oh, still, that's why. So this is because an async function, that's why I also prefer using promises in use effects or like that then stuff, and not async-await. Anyway, because you still need to use the word await. Now do this. There you go. Of course it won't work. Usually it gives you a warning like there's like a red error, but in this case I guess I'm not using, let's say, an ESLint or something, so it doesn't really warn me. Interesting. Anyway, it doesn't work like that, so let's just console log it inside of here. What? There's no data? Really? Oh. Let's try just plain. Maybe to do. What? Let's go to history. There's JSON. Let's try to copy this. Oh, Really now? Oh my god. Do I look stupid? Yes, I do. Okay, we call this function, which is a promise, but since it's a void, then we don't really need to wait for anything, do we? We just need to let this be resolved. There we go. Oh my goodness. There we go. That's a lot. Okay, I think I'm gonna use this as well. Fake data. Yep, and there we go. This is the data, which took some time. If you can like notice it right here, pay attention to the terminal. So voila, around 2 seconds really, and 400 more items. That's a lot. And yeah, okay, let me actually try the promise method, because earlier we didn't really used JSON rather. So let's say that const, well, let's just say that data equals to JSON. There we go, and result data. What? Then we just copy over raw data. Const data equals raw data. Wait, is it because we need to use the then here? Oh, I see. I see. Do I? Yeah, I see. Because in async-await we just say await, but in here this is a promise, yeah, right. So actually, what we need to do here is just have let data, yes, and then inside. So inside of a new promise, we need to have or resolve a promise. So, but then, and then the value of that, which will be the data or raw data, which is the response rather, that contains headers, body, etc. But what we need here is the JSON. To JSONified. I don't know why it's called JSON. But JSON's pretty much the brackets that we keep seeing here. Like this function right here is pretty much just an object, which is JSON. But I'll explain that in the future when I have more knowledge about it. Anyway, let's continue. So value dot JSON. Now there's the the suggestions rather, IntelliSense. I like this. Then value.json, and then we want this to have a callback function, which is right there. See what I mean? This is what they call the callback. Now I see. So a promise, you need to have a then for value, and then since this fetch API returns a promise, then we need to, or like returns a response, and the JSON inside the response is a promise right here, and another callback. So that, and as you've seen earlier, async-await is much more, it's more readable than this. Anyway, so we actually didn't need this, did we? Oh well. But we can have a catch error here actually. So that catch, I can just say we want to error, we want to reject, and the value of that reject will be the error. The same with this one, that catch, error, and reject. I forgot one more thing in async-await as well. Okay, let me continue that after this. For the finally, I won't do it anymore because it's like repetitive. Anyway, now the data, we want to resolve the data. There we go. So now, yes, let's go. Okay, it worked. See what I mean? So I guess you don't need these. So you don't need this as well, actually. So you don't need a new promise, I see. So I guess we can just have this, and then format this. Then we can just say that we want to console.log. Console.log data. Would that work? Oh no, initialize data promise. Or the variable. Ah, I see. I see. I will just say return error. Oh, really? Ah, this is a return state. Okay. Ah, oops, well that was awkward. To return the error. So like if there's an error during the fetching process, we want to return that. And if the fetch was successful, but there's a problem with, let's say, turning the data or response rather into a JSON, then we will return that error as well. So now that, and then we will return the data here. So we will just assign this as the data, and we console.log. And it's undefined. What are you doing, bro? So this method is from, I see. So the one we did earlier was correct. Understandable. Okay, I'm loving async-await more and more, but yeah, there you go, it's actually working. So you need to have a promise to fulfill a promise, which is this. Ah, okay. So we need to envelop this whole operation inside of a promise because, well, we have to wait for this. And earlier it was actually synchronous, which is right here. This is synchronous. And the only synchronous thing this does, as I've explained earlier, is to return this new promise, which is then waited here, like resolved here rather, which will then be console logged right here. And it's what it resolves, data. And if there's an error right here, reject, it will console error, which is this, the value that's passed on inside of that catch block. Now, for the async-await, where's that? Right here, right? Like, okay, let's compare this for a minute. Man, I love async-await. Look at this. Look at the difference. Although this is good to practice because in stuff like use effects in React and generally this kind of stuff, like you need to catch a lot. And in async, it also gets pretty ugly fast, and I will show you why. So and one thing we'll do here is I'll try. This is a try catch block, which is special in, I think, unique in async-await functions and catch. So it's almost the same, right? So here we'll try, or the function will try to resolve this stuff right here. But if it's not, let's say, if it fails, then we will catch the error that happened, or the malform or the thing that went wrong rather. Then we will just console error that error. Then this also has a finally right here. It's pretty much the same as the promise that catch and that finally keys. Guess you can say. Then we can just console log the async function has finished running. And then what's important here is that in this try inside of this, you need to put everything that you want to run inside of this try block. That's why it gets ugly pretty fast. Like if you have something like an error handling, which is what you need to have in, let's say, big projects, you need to have error handling. And the main functionality of this function get data in itself. But of course, in this case, we just want to console log. And you can have, let's say, a function to like separate it. What's it called? So Tagalog of naman. So you can just separate it. So in here we can just say a function of handle error, and let's actually do that. Function handle error, and you can have this in a separate file and just import it and the error, and we console that error, or do something like alert or show a page, like redirect the user to a page and stuff like that. Alright, I keep forgetting that I need to run the function. My goodness. That's why it takes a long time for me to develop stuff. There we go. It's now empty. It's because we said to do our comments. Is this correct? Or is it really empty like that? Okay, there we go. Because we set it to do. I think that's it. Is that it? I'm not really good at explaining because I'm more used to, let's say, the front end, but there we go. That's the fundamental of JavaScript. And for event loops, there's a great explanation in YouTube, but I forgot what his name was, but it's pretty much the same as what I've said, but much more detailed definitely and clearer than mine. Anyway, that's all, right? Yeah, that's all. Yeah, that's all. Thank you for watching. Oh, it's actually 1 hour. It has actually been 1 hour now. I think I'll upload just a poem tomorrow. Anyway, thanks for watching and have a good day. Good luck on your developer journey or development journey. Bye.